I'm Bret. I'm a Group Program Manager at Microsoft for Windows Media Server and Administration. And today what I'm going to present to you is creating stations, radio and TV stations, for both the Internet and for corporations. Now you've seen a lot on playlists today already. Tom Honeybone had a little bit about it, and he talked about the server side of it, how you can create programs. Brooks Cutter's also seen some of it, or showed some of it. And you've probably also seen several websites today. LaunchCast is one that was shown, I believe. Also, SonicNet was shown. And I'm going to show you one other here this afternoon. But all those are using playlists. So what I'm going to get into today is actually discussing the mechanics of how you build those things. There's actually two major focuses for the presentation. One is scenarios. Oh, okay. While I'm talking here. So two major focuses on the presentation will be first scenarios. There's many different kind of playlist scenarios from the client, driven by the client side or driven by the server side to get certain effects for how you want end users to be able to either get personalized content or broadcast content. There's also many different ways to do ad insertion with the Windows Media Platform. So I'm going to first discuss all the various scenarios, and then I'm going to get into the technology pretty heavily and start getting into what are some of the ways that you can actually deliver personalized ads to a client during a broadcast, for instance, or simple ads just in line inside of an ASX. Then I'm also going to bring up David Eisenberg today, halfway through the presentation. He's from Engage Technologies, and he'll show you how Engage is using Windows Media Platform and their technology to actually deliver ads to people who are interested in their service, and so we'll look at that as well. So it is an agenda, which you can't see here, but I can, and I'll tell you how we're going to go through this. I'm first going to go through some definitions I want to make you familiar with. Then we'll go through the scenarios, and technology-wise, I'll talk about client-side and server-side playlists, and then also how you incorporate advertisements into playlists. And then finally, I'll follow up actually with some fault tolerance and monitoring issues along with how you set up these systems. So all these playlists you've seen today, I'm really going to get into the mechanics of how that works. Great. So definition-wise, there are two different kinds of experiences. If you're watching TV at home, you're in a passive experience with a broadcast. When we talk about broadcast, it's something that the user does not have a control over that experience. Certainly personalized is the opposite of that, where they actually have control and fast forward and rewind, for instance. They could also, in the PC world, versus say watching broadcasts, you could actually affect what gets streamed to you by, if you've seen LaunchCast, for instance, and many of the other radio stations, they allow you to rate whether you like an artist or not. So then you can actually remove them from your playlist. Multicast versus unicast. Multicast is always a broadcast in that it's content that's emanating from the server. It's one stream that everybody picks up on versus unicast. So if everyone in this room wanted to watch content and I wanted you to watch it in a broadcast fashion, I would multicast it because that's one copy of the content on the LAN. Whereas if it's unicast, all of you have connections back to me on the server, and that's a huge network hit. So there's a difference there. Live and on demand. Live we talk about as real time, and it's a passive experience in that the user doesn't have control over what they're watching as well. Whereas on demand, similar to personalized, they do. And the last definition I'll talk about is static versus dynamic. When I show you some of the scenarios, you'll see that many of them can just be statically defined like in an ASX file or on the server, or you can dynamically produce them. So what is a playlist? Playlist is actually a lot of things. It's just a sequential playback of content. It can be either broadcast or on demand. It can be 7 by 24 or a lot shorter. So in a corporation, you can have easily just a set of 10 different training tapes that play in a carousel, for instance, and it just plays at some preset time. Or it could be a 7 by 24 channel, which a lot of people on the web are doing. Lots of jazz and other kinds of genres and radio stations are just playing 7 by 24. It's all I listen to anymore. It's fantastic. Great control for end users. You can stream anything through these channels. They can be interactive or passive. That's the beauty of the internet or PC technology and network technology in general, is that you can affect what you're watching, and you can then change the experience of it. You can change the ending of a story. You can change the content that's being played in the playlist, etc. Windows Media Technologies enables ads as well. Actually, yes, to the next point, in many different ways. Both bumper and interstitial ads, which I'll talk about, static and dynamic, and client-side and server-side. I'll show you how you put all that together in different ways to get different effects. And we also support, as I mentioned, both client-side and server-side. So let's get into the scenario part of presentation. I'll kind of go through a number of different ways that people are using the technology. This is a broadcast in that everyone watches the same piece of content. We have a set of files that are playing on the server. It can be either unicast or multicast out, and it's pretty much an automated thing. It's a set of files that play in sequence. You can also, in a broadcast experience, obviously augment that and say, actually create a real radio station. And you can use this with the technology today with Windows Media 4.0 and 4.1. You can even do it with version 3, where you could be mixing in a combination of songs and then a live DJ that then says, and the weather today is blah, 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 blah. Now let's get back to some more songs. So you can actually do that today by having in your playlist camera feeds as well as on-demand content. And I'm going to show you how to actually put something like that together. Well, there's one other point I wanted to make about that actually is you can see the graph here, feed 1 and feed 2 and out. I mean, you can create easily a producer's console which actually has the multiple feeds just like a producer would an analog with analog devices. And you can choose how you present your content. So cut to camera 1, you're at a concert, cut to camera 2, etc. There are just different encoder feeds. You present them as players in the DVRC app, for instance, and then you have an output window, which is the thing that's actually going out via the broadcast. So this is all very possible and easy to do, actually, today with the various SDKs either on the player and the server side. Another very popular playlist scenario today is just rebroadcast of analog content. If you go out to windowsmedia.com, there's over 1,100 radio stations worldwide that just being simply rebroadcast. And there's actually many different models. For the most part, they're just rebroadcast. So if you're listening to a radio station in Australia, you're getting all of their local ads in Sydney, for instance. And there's also a number of scenarios we're working with a number of providers on, and ISVs, by the way, that will enable the ability to do, say, U.S.-based ads on top of Australian rebroadcast content. So it's actually similar to the way the TV works today, where you're watching the Leno show and they say, let's cut to an ad, and there might be a broadcast ad that everybody gets, but then a tone comes down just after that, and then that tone tells a local station to now play their ad. In a very similar way, we're enabling this with a lot of partners where you actually have a broadcast stream that goes out to everyone, and our tone is what we call an event, something you can place inside the stream that can tell a client to then go play a personalized ad or an ad local to that city, region, municipality, whatever it might be. So it's very similar to the way TV and radio works today with these tones. We're enabling the same techniques here. And that's local over national ads, national over local, and every which way you can. So this one is a little bit different, and we'll start off with a little animation here to show you how you can get personalized on-demand content as well. And the first thing you might do actually is have, in order to enable it, is have your player, this is all player side, is have your players actually go hit an ASP server first. And if you notice in the URL down the bottom there after the question mark, there's a user, some kind of identification about who this user is. And you have on your server side a database which tracks all of these users and what they like and what their choices are and what genres they want. If you've gone out to any of the SonicNet or the Launchcast or Broadcast.com, these kinds of sites that have these kinds of personalization service features, this is what happens. There's a combination of ASP pages doing this. And once the ASP server gets this request, and it goes off and grabs that data, says this is Sue's playlist, so this is the content that she wants to listen to in this particular sequence. Bob and Jane have a different set of sequences. That ASX syntax is sent back to the player, and then each player has their own experience, playing different pieces, different songs in different orders just based on who they are. So bringing in an ASP server into the scenario is one way to actually create that personalization instead of having a broadcast. If you look at other additional radio and TV style scenarios, there's, as I mentioned, there's user feedback that we incorporated into it to change the experience. There's also lots of pay-per-view and subscription-based kind of playlists that ICPs, content providers that are popping up that actually then will charge you for particular either quality of the stream, where because you're paid so much per month or something, then you're going to get actually a higher level or 200 to 300 kilobit stream versus actually getting a lower quality stream, or you're just going to get different content altogether. And you can tie that in with the service capability that they're doing authentication and billing for e-commerce. And also the Larry King Live scenario is enabling basically a passive broadcast experience where a lot of people are passively watching, but then there's also participants in it who dial in or they phone in and they want to ask a question of the moderator. And that's very possible with the technology as well. And all you're doing is basically bringing another feed, and you're just switching as a producer on the back end to a different source. So that's another type of scenario. Some other more corporate-focused scenarios in radio and TV would be like a conference station where you take conferences like this and you have you're hosting that content on your servers at that corporation. There are also service providers out on the internet doing that for conferences like this, and what you'll find is that you can go out at any time and actually watch this content. And actually, the last streaming media in '99 in Amsterdam and in New York was that way. You can go to their site and actually review all of the materials from the sessions. Then also marketing product literature. Lots of how-to types of training sites. Human resource departments and a lot of corporations are putting together using streaming media to discuss policies with the company and so on. And also an interesting one that's actually getting is really a huge following right now, especially in the financial area, are these CEO analyst morning call kinds of scenarios, where a lot of company officials and executives are coming up on a morning basis and actually talking about what's important to the company that day or for that week or whatever it might be. And anyone around the world can tap into it. If you're off on the other side of the world, then it's archived on demand so you can watch it later. And these kinds of scenarios are actually getting a lot of prominence. In the ad insertion area, we'll talk about some ad insertion scenarios now. As mentioned earlier, there are a couple different ad types. You have streaming media banner type ads. And actually, I'll come over here to the demo machine and I'll show you an example of a demo you've seen earlier today where you saw basically I'll show you here. You can have a banner ad such as this, it's a static banner. And then at any point in this kind of capabilities, you can pop in.
The resolution begins here. On July 15th, the promise of the Internet.
So, different types of ways you can incorporate streaming media instead of a postage stamp up in the banner, expanding it when somebody hovers over it. And there's many different kinds of, actually a scenario I think you viewed today in different ways you can actually incorporate streaming media into the site like this. I'll go back to the slides. Other types are, of course, there's bumper or lead-in ads in the beginning of a clip, where it's more part. The ads are more part of the focus of the site, which is more of a 7x24, for instance, TV station, and also interstitial ads. Bumper ads are like you hear with the radio station, where they talk about their call letters and so on, and they put that in between songs, between stories, and so on, or news. And interstitial is really a similar thing, but it's ad focused typically. Those are the different kinds of terms you'll hear with ad types. So as far as scenario goes, there's, again, many different types of scenarios you can look at for ads. Server broadcast capabilities and also more client-side personalized. So starting with broadcast, just similar to the slide we saw a little bit earlier, you could have a playlist which simply just has ads in it, and everyone gets the same ad. That's certainly one simple scenario. The other is the same slide we saw earlier too, but now you're just, instead of having just playlists of media A, B, and C, you're incorporating an ad into that playlist as well. Now, what's interesting about that is you have many different possibilities of how you get that ad. So the ad in that playlist can be generated by going off to a service provider like a DoubleClick or Engage, in which they actually do ad campaigns and a tracking of who you are all anonymously. And actually, Dave will talk more about how all this works. Is you can then pull that ad from that user and what they are interested in into their playlist. Of course, it could also be a static insertion where it's this is just when I have a stock of 10 ads and I want to rotate through them. So that would be an idea of a static. This is a static playlist. What the user gets back as static is they play through everything, they're playing it, and as they get to ad.asf, that's what they end up playing. Now, another way to look at it is through dynamic. And looking through what's assumed here and how you can actually automate the entire process. One is first going to the site and getting the ASX first generated. So this is the process of first doing that. And this is similar to what I was just mentioning on the prior slide, where you get a list of content. But then when you send back to the user, notice that the difference is that instead of a static ad.asf, it's actually an HTTP reference to an ASP. So that won't actually get executed in the player until the ASX gets down, the player gets down to that point in the ASX file. And it won't execute until then. So when the player selects in that ASX file, as if you were listening to Brooks' session here earlier, one of the actually cool options you have as ASX files, there's actually two different options, is that the player will take in this ASX file and actually dereference everything immediately as an option, which means that that ASP will get dereferenced immediately, or you can have it done dynamically, which is really, I think, how a lot of people would like to have it, because then as you go through everything and you hit that spot, anything might have happened up to that point, and you want to get the latest data for Sue and provide the right ad. So then that's returned back to the user as this, as you see there. Content gets played to the server. Content A is played, then B, and then to dereference now this ASP. And actually, this is all done in the player by a queuing mechanism. Halfway through B, for instance, the player will actually begin to queue up the next item so that the stream switch between the two is actually fairly seamless. And so once the ASP is hit, then the player will go off to this ASP server. The query is made for Sue again based on the question mark after the ad.asp. Then that content is sent back to the player, and then basically that ad inserted into the playlist as ad 1 or whatever, and then it continues on. So that is one way of looking at how you can actually put together personalized ads dynamically in the player. Now another scenario similar is where you mix the two worlds, where you have, and this is a very interesting scenario where a lot of people are trying to get a lot of hold on, because this is an experience that I think a lot of people would like to have, where you have a broadcast on the server, you have your 7x24 playlist set up, where you're sending out a set of songs in a sequence, but then when you want to play an ad, instead of a broadcast ad that everyone has to look at, you want to actually have each one of those players go off to an ASP server and actually pull down their own ad. It's personalized for them. So this is something, again, obviously doing TV land today, because it's a passive experience. You get the ad that is played to everyone around the country, for instance. In this model, everyone is getting the same content. They're all watching Drew Carey, but then when it goes to cut to an ad, you're actually going off and getting your personalized content. So to follow that Leno example I mentioned earlier, when Leno goes to cut to an ad and the tone goes out for all these clients who go off and play their ad, what typically happens at the broadcast level from NBC is that it'll send out a 35-second spot. And if you ever see when you come back from a local ad, there's always that picture, and there's music playing and so on. Well, they do that so that all of those affiliates can come back at some point milliseconds off in that area. So every municipality or city is actually coming back a little bit differently, but all within that final endpoint. And that's exactly what you would do here as well. So the first thing is the player goes off to the ASP server and retrieves an ASX file. That ASX has two items in it. Instead of a playlist, it actually has only one item in the playlist, and that's the top item there. And basically, it's a link to a broadcast publishing point on the server. And we'll talk about that more. And so it's listening to a broadcast of content, right? First, if you look at the broadcast playlist, you have the encoder that's playing, and then the producer may cut over to a media, back to the encoder to play through the list of content. But now comes time that the producer wants to play a personalized ad. I mentioned we do this through something called an event. In the stream from the encoder, in this case, you can actually make it part of an ASF file as well. You're actually going to embed a command. It's called an event command. And people use these things for all kinds of things, not just what I'm going to show you here. And we'll talk more about that. What happens is this open event, what you want to do is send this command first. And what this does is it primes the player, queues up that ad that needs to get played. And then subsequent, just after that, is you send the event, which means to switch now. So what happens is this event gets sent down the packet stream to the player. The player sees that part that's in the green there, which is called an event entry. And you see type equals event. And the name of it is called ad. That never gets played in a sequence. If an event never came and the player just kept playing, it would always play that first item. An event is never played unless this event comes down the stream, either, like I say, from an encoder or from a file. So when that does come down, what will happen is that gets triggered, that entry gets triggered, and in this case, it's to an ASP on a web server. So we go out to the web server again. We have Sue as the entry on the side of that. So Sue comes back with a personalized ad. That ad gets played from a server, typically a different server than the one that's actually received from the broadcast. And as soon as that is done, as soon as that ad is done, you notice the resume type. I actually don't have it in here because I didn't have room. I'll show you actually in code in the demo. That the resume, there's 3 different resume types on an event, where you can actually just resume back to the broadcast. You can break from it. You can also go to the next item in the playlist. In this case, you would resume right back to the broadcast, coming right in just before that Leno picture is, and then you continue down the broadcast. In this case, you see media B is the next thing that's being played, and then you could also then play a file, which also has this embedded event. So what you're experiencing here is a broadcast playlist with a personalized ad being played on the client side. Okay, so we'll show you a demo here, actually, of a different kind of ad insertion, which is based on a user profile that is being tracked, in this case, a fictitious demo by MSNBC, about the kinds of things that you like. So if we can head over to the demo machine.
The resolution,
Head back.
the resolution begins.
The resolution just ended. Okay. So here we have MSNBC, there's your site, and you as a user come up and you want to view a list of the stories that are hot for that day. But instead of taking you through all of these stories one by one as you see in a broadcast experience, this is a little bit different. First, what I'll do is, if I haven't already signed on, then I'll come in and put my name in. And I'll put in here some interest, et cetera. This could be tracked in a number of different ways. And it certainly doesn't have to be NBC that tracks this thing. It might be somebody different that's actually tracking it. And what I do is I come down to eventually this page that I can go through every day without having to go through that process, by the way, where actually each of the stories is going to be in a preview mode. And there's a button actually in the bottom of the player you see there that's depressed, and that actually means that we're in preview mode. And the list of stories here that you see on the right side is actually getting played 10 seconds at a time in the preview. So you say, oh, well, I like that, I don't like that ad, I want this one. So I'll come through here and say I want to read the Princess Di one and Wildfire, for instance. And I'll come up here and say, play only those selected ones. So I get a choice as an end user, what I want to listen to instead of having to go through the entire broadcast. And what happens is what MSNBC would come back with, for instance, as an example, is first an ad based on what you like, and then it'll go to each of those stories. So this is one example of how you could actually, you can insert ads into the end user's experience, but then also provide them with a service in how they actually view their content, giving them choice in how they view their data. Now this is all a client-side experience. This is client.asx being dynamically generated via an ASP page off what the user selected. And you'll see how that it cuts to the content you play it. Okay. If we head back over to the slides. What I'd like to do now is actually, pulling off that demo, is bring up David now. David Eisenberg of Engage Technologies. I'm going to have you take you through how Engage actually uses Windows Media Platform to actually do this personalized ad experience. Thanks, David.
Thanks, Bret. Okay. Just a moment about who Engage is and why we're here today. We have software and services that enable you to identify, address, and understand your audience. A key application of that is targeted advertising, and we are extending our targeted advertising services to the streaming media space because we believe it's important to turn streaming media activities from a cost center into a revenue driver. So let's look at one way that we can go about doing that. First, whenever I start off talking about streaming advertising, I like to make a distinction between rich media advertising and streaming media advertising. Perhaps not as important for the crowd in this room, but it's critically important whenever you're talking to advertisers or agencies. Because historically they've had a negative reaction to rich media. To them, rich media means fat media shoved down a narrow pipe. It slows performance, crashes browsers, makes users unhappy, and doesn't get a display great response rate, or impact. Ads in the streaming world are very, very different. The intelligent streaming techniques exist in Windows Media mean that you have optimal use of the bandwidth available. If you have a broadband quality connection, you can get near TV quality experience. Additionally, I think it's important that because a user requested a multimedia clip, they've expected a multimedia experience, they're receptive to it, they're not surprised to it. Some of the initial research we've seen shows that aided ad and or brand recall can increase between 150 to 200% with streaming media versus traditional banner advertising. So pretty big impact. Bret talked about some of the ways that you can implement streaming ads. There are a variety of ways to play in this space. He mentioned the three primary ad types are lead-ins, interstitials, or bumpers at the end of the content. A variety of ad links. We believe that in sort of the soundbite nature of the internet, shorter ad links will prevail. And of course, you have a variety of targeting options. Bret talked about some of those as well. Everything from simple, untargeted, or run-of-network ads to some of the more traditionally targeted ads by area of content or specific sites or keywords. Or in the case of some of the engaged services, profile-targeted ads, which are targeted to an individual's demonstrated interests. And I'm going to walk you through a demo of how we can do that. Okay. Seem to be frozen here. Okay. Popcorn is a site that we work with in the UK. We like to say is engage enabled. And if you're going to target an ad to the user, the first thing you need to have is some knowledge about who they are and what their interests might be. Engage has a database of 35 million anonymous user profiles that we capture by working with a network of sites across the internet. So this is an example of a sample profile, and there are three key things to note about this profile. First is the anonymous ID. We are cookie-based, but we're 100% anonymous. We don't capture any personally identifiable information anywhere in our database. So no name, address, email address. We don't capture your IP address or anything like that. So while we can address you, we don't know that it is you. The second is the interest categories down the left-hand side. We have an ontology of over 800 categories that we categorize your activities into. So here you see some automotive interests. We've been shopping for a new car, and particularly we've been looking at a Saab. You see that I'm from the Boston area, and that I have an interest in basketball. Our categories actually go 4 layers deep. So sports, basketball, you could pick a team, the Celtics, and even a player on that team if we wanted to go that deep. Now let's look at how we can put that profile to use. So what you see is that we've inserted an ad in front of the clip that we've requested that's targeted to us based off our Saab interest. Now we're seeing the clip complete.
Lots of difference. Something you believe about the future. Buckle your seatbelt, Dorothy, because Candace is going to bye-bye one more thing of the past. No one can control what the Matrix is. Well, you have to see it for yourself. Matrix, rated R. Now playing at a theater near you.
I never thought I'd be on the basketball court dancing with the ball, but Duke would get on the microphone, he'd be like, future. So while he danced up, I put the ball on the floor, and I start dancing, like, yeah. You can't guard me, money. You can't guard me, money. So I'll pick it up, and he'll reach in, and I'll throw the ball right behind my neck, and then I look at money, I'll be like, damn, money, why you reaching in? I said, just stuff like that, and it's mind your business.
Chicago Bulls.
And so that was obviously a Nike ad targeted to our basketball interest. So just one more slide, a little bit about what's going on behind the scenes. And as Bret mentioned, there's about 10 different ways to skin this cat. This is just one. That's a fairly simple example for targeted ad insertion to an on-demand clip. It's a little hard to see here, but basically what we have in this ASX file is what looks like a server-side include. So the main dash dash, insert ad this page, and then beneath that, the snippet or ad insert profile.auto.sob equals medium or high. So that's our targeting criteria. Once the client initiates that ASX file, it sends it to the server. The filter on that server parses the ad call and sends it to the ad server for processing. Once the ad call reaches the ad server, the server reads the targeting criteria. It goes to its profile cache, pulls the user's profile, checks to see if that profile matches an active campaign, and if it does, it returns the location of that clip to the web server. If it doesn't, it returns a default ad that it would have inserted in the standard queue. Next, the ISAPI filter on the web server replaces the ad call with the file location for the ad clip. So here you see we have an href to popcorn.com ads and sob.asf. And then once that's been resolved, the ASX file will communicate with the Windows Media Server and deliver the ads and the clips. So that's an example of profile targeted ads using Windows Media Technologies.
Great. Thank you, David.
Thanks, Bret.
Appreciate it. So I hope that gives you a good idea of the various ways that ads can be incorporated, both from the server side and the client side. Should go past this slide here. Move right on now to the technical side of how you actually accomplish this, these various scenarios. So as I mentioned, there's different kinds of playlists, client side and server side. Which one should you use? What are the benefits? On the client side, certainly personalization. You can be driven via ASPs, or the whole ASX can be generated via an ASP, or just entries within it. It offloads processing to the client. You can imagine you could also execute that ASP on the server for every client and drive personalized streams to the player, except you're talking about a server now that can be extremely bogged down. So one certain benefit is offload that processing. And then also that the client side will actually have tight stream tolerance with that queuing mechanism. Server side does a similar thing with stream switch tolerance, as well as it's far more efficient for a real-time broadcast. You can certainly imagine on a stream switch, if you have 1,000 different people all connecting to the exact same thing back on the server, the next piece of media in a playlist, then the server is going to get 1,000 hits all at once. So for broadcast scenarios, certainly this is the way you want to go. Certainly you can also combine the two worlds, and that's the scenario that I mentioned earlier where you have broadcast capabilities along with personalized control. Looking a little more into the client side, and Brooks put into a little bit of this, and I'll augment on what he's already gone through. Client-side ASXs, you could put in loops. You'll see an example of that here coming quick. Durations, you can nest those playlists. You can have a single URL returned in an ASP or an entire ASX returned into a particular position in an ASX too. You can associate metadata and ad banners. We talked about preview. And then the last 2 points I've made. Events. So these are the things that you can embed either in a file, and events are actually something that actually do more than just trigger an event inside of an ASX. An event is actually something that's part of a larger thing we call script commands. And if you look up on MSDN, there's a lot of data on how to use these things with the encoder and in files, sending them to a player. And they're used for all kinds of things, for driving a client-side user interface changes. You saw earlier there was a Flash demo and also the HTML demo, where all it was driven by commands inside the stream. Those are script commands. An event is really just a different script command. In this case, it's telling an ASX to go and actually change to something. It's part of this thing called script commands. They're sent to the player in 2 different ways. I'll show you how to do it in the encoder and also embedded within a player. And as I mentioned, once you're in a playlist in an ASX and you get this event coming into the player, you jump out of where you are and you go down and you play that event. You can have multiple events, by the way. And as soon as you get done playing that, content, then you return back to, you can actually have three options. You can return exactly to where you left off on the entry inside the ASX. You could also break out of that entire, if there was a loop that you were going through, you could break out of that whole thing. And the third option is actually not going back to where you left off from, but going just to the next item. So you have those three options. So that was client side. Looking at server side now, playlists can be either unicast or multicast, and I'll show you both. You have loops and durations. Streams can be sourced from a number of different places, just really like from the player in a lot of ways, from either a local disk, a remote encoder, or a remote server for fan-out scenarios. And they're created a couple different ways. You can create via the user interface, which I'll show you actually both these ways, through the administrator. And you'll actually create it through 4 different types of objects that all have different purposes and specialties: publishing point, station, program, and streams. And via the APIs, you do it through 3 different mechanisms: the publishing point, station, and streams. Programs is actually, as I'll show you, an added service really on top of what's called the station API. So looking at some definitions, I'll just quickly go through these if you're not familiar with them. A publishing point is what is the point at which a client connects to for unicast purposes. And it also, a publishing point can be used for distribution to another server. You can source a single stream from a publishing point to any of the 4 places you see on the slide there. And there's full Windows Media SDK support for this. A station, it's similar to a publishing point. It's at a point that clients actually get content from, but it's for multicast. And in version 4, we have what's called connectionless or sessionless multicast. A station is the thing that actually broadcasts that content that players pick up on. A station can also be used for distribution to another server, to another actually publishing point on a remote server, or actually another station on a remote server. And what goes into a station are stream objects. This will actually be an important point that we'll see here in some demos, is that a station itself, you don't assign an URL to go play. You actually, what plays through a station are stream objects. And you can have n number of stream objects, and all you do is switch to each different stream object. And I'll show you more about that. Stream objects themselves are like publishing points in that they source an URL and against those 4 different locations and full SDK support. The program manager is something that actually in our user interface creates a playlist for you on the server side. It is a value-added service more or less on top of the station API. I can create a VB application to do exactly what the program manager does. Some of its benefits are allowing you to store a list of stream objects in something called a playlist, and we persist that. So when you turn off the server, bring it back up, etc., then that content, those lists are there for you. You can do loops and durations also. If you want to do more than what it provides, then that's where, just as the program manager uses the station APIs, you can also write a custom app, and I'm going to show you 2 demos actually to do that. So now, that's my talk. Let's go into demos. We have a number of demos lined up. This is the demo configuration we have up here. I don't think anyone's talked about this quite yet about what we have up here. There's basically all single proc servers, 450s, lots of memory, Ethernet. These are pretty standard, workstations at home. And with Windows Media Services, also Windows 2000, you've been seeing all day actually on all these, etc. All right, so the first demo is, I'm actually going to go through the first demo because I think you've seen this enough. It's a very simple ASX. It's 3 entries in an ASX that play sequentially. Brooks Cutter's session really got into that. If you weren't familiar with that, you'll actually see actually many demos where I'll show you actually sequentially playing through. In this case, it's a static ASX played one after another. In this demo, what I'll do is I'll show you how you can actually then put an ad inside there. And when we cut over to the demo machine here, you'll see that after simple playlist, basically all it is, and as you've seen actually in a couple of demos earlier today as well, where an ad is simply just placed in line. Now on the slide, it shows 3 pieces of content playing in full. What I've done for the demo is actually put a timer on it at 10 seconds so that we can actually see the switch to the next item more quickly.
On July 15th, the promise of the Internet and the power of television become one.
This was a little bit longer, actually. I put 13 after that. Here it goes back. So you have some kind of a music video station, and you pop in an ad into the middle of it. Okay, go back to the slides. So that was pretty simple. It was a static link for back to the slides, please. It was a static link inside of the middle of an ASX file. These pages, excuse me. These slides, the demos. Oh no, these demos are not. I basically made them up all last week. So this is real time. I will make these available though. I will find a way that on the site that supports this conference, I will find a way to make these available to you because I've always wanted to get these kinds of things out for people. It's a very mechanics kind of set of demos just so you can get an idea of how things work. Okay, so that's where we're static at. Now let's move on to some fun stuff where we've got client-side ad, so a personalized experience for the end user. But in the middle, we have a dynamic ASP actually driving the ad. The ASP, you see at the bottom there, is just for demo purposes doing nothing. It's basically, as you see there, returning one thing, response.write is what you use in an ASP to actually return content to the browser or text or commands. In this case, it's simply returning the exact URL that I could have typed in statically. And what you'd really want to do here, of course, is from here go into a database, make a database call, and pull back an ad based on a campaign that you're trying to drive, etc. So we can switch over to the demo machine. Take a look at this. So what this is doing is playing through
Cameras and rockets from the ground shot these spectacular images of a thermonuclear bomb exploding in space. This film is part of a batch declassified by the Department of Energy today and released for the first time.
Player went off and queued up without us behind the scenes. That HTTP would hit the ASP would turn that URL, queued it up, and now playing. And back to playing content. Again, I've cut these off just to get to the demos. So what I'm going to show you actually on the backside, just so you can see that ASP in all of its glory, is right here. So you can just see that that's all I've done is actually done a response.write and return that URL to the browser. Okay, well, we'll get a little bit fancier now. If we go back to the slides, please. Lots of hopping around. Now, I'll actually, instead of just dynamically generating the ad, I'll dynamically generate the entire playlist. So there's one URL. You notice there's a repeat 3 or 4 lines down. So it's just going to sit there and continue to play new items. And it's going to be on the back side, of course, now I have who this user is. And I'd have like a question mark if I had a real database set up in an end user. And I know that they played this song, that going to play this song next. I know their playlist because they've actually, prior to coming and picking up this ASX, they've said, I like jazz, I like rock, I like classical, and etc. So this will constantly go back to the ASP. So again, that ASP is generic. I just give back one item, but then you can have certainly the more sophisticated mechanism. So if we flip back to the demos here, we have dynamic playlist. So for this, again, so that was one ASP hit. Now I have 10 seconds set, so it's behind in the background, going back and pulling back the second ASP hit. I have 10 seconds of the duration again, so about 5 seconds to go back and make the next one as well. And just to show you on the server what I've done to generate that, quite simple actually, is, and again, this is really where more sophistication is really called for with making a call to a database to find out who that user was. All I've done is basically randomly generated a number and had it pop into a select statement. So that's how I've actually physically done this demo. Okay, so we flip back to slides. So now let's talk more about on the server side. Server side, I'll now create a multicast station that has a playlist in it. And you'll see how we set that up. You saw, if you attended Tom Honeybone's session earlier, you saw him use the Windows Media Administrator to create a unicast station What we're going to see now is using a similar wizard to create a unicast or a multicast station. So the administrator, down the left side here, I'll choose multicast. Actually, I'll get rid of what's somewhere down here. There we go. Okay, so we'll go through, create the multicast, create a new station. I'll kind of give it a name, for instance. I'll have it repeat. And this wizard allows you to set up a single file. And this one will have it's called possession. And what I'll need to do is actually find that content. Now, there's many things on these panels to discuss as why, for certain reasons why we're going through some of these steps. So I'm going to go through them very quickly, of course, for time. There's lots of information here about how you can have unicast rollover rules in case the person can't connect via multicast, and those kinds of things is what we're basically setting up. This is a publishing wizard that allows you to create, basically publish the link for that content. In this case, I'm going to have an object tag embedded inside an ASX file. I'll also do another one there too. So I'm all finished. Let's do save it. So I'll actually save it over to my web server directory. And now I'm saving the HTML pages, which I'm having generate for me so I can easily test it. Now I'm done. I can now basically go off and test this stream working. So I had one stream inside of what's called a program, inside of a station multicast. And if you take a look here at the properties, you'll see here, it's actually multicast right now. Okay, well that's fine and dandy. Now let's go through and actually put some more streams in here. I'll put one other stream. Call this stream 2. And the URL to this one is WM. So we'll use buck cherry. And what I'm going to do is put a duration on this again so we don't listen to it forever. So what I'm doing is creating and I'll actually clip the other one as well. I'll change the duration on it. So I mentioned some terms earlier in slides. And what you'll see there's two streams in a program being played through a station via multicast. And what I'll do now is start that program. So now the server is actually multicasting this content out. And if I come over here to the multicast station, I can basically plug in and listen to it. Now I could also easily come in and connect to it in unicast. So that was multicast. Now, if I only wanted to do this via unicast, in other words, you want on the server, the scenario is you want to create a playlist for unicast only, for instance, for the internet scenarios. Again, as Tom mentioned earlier, the internet's not really set up for multicast. So what you do to enable that is basically create any set of streams here through a program to a station, and then you basically have that station pipe into a unicast publishing point. In this case, I've created a publishing point called Station 1 that points at that station actually. So now I can have a client connect directly into this via unicast. If I click on over to the demos again, I may have stopped it. Let me see here real quick. Cool. So now if I right click, look at statistics, it is going to be unicast. So the way to actually create then a static playlist, in the program manager you can't create something that's dynamic, something that changes often. So what I'm going to show you now is actually how to do that via the APIs. We can flip back to the slides real quick. I'll show you how that looks. So that was the multicast. And if we look then at unicast, go back to the slides, please, there. Slides. There we go. So as you saw earlier, you had multicast, and when you want to go to unicast, I mentioned that then you had to bring in a publishing point. So now what I'm going to show is how instead of the program manager on the right side driving all of this, I'm going to use the APIs to actually drive this custom experience. There's two things I'm going to show you. One is how to have the automated playlist actually play through, and then I'll also have a demo for the live experience or the manual switch where I'm the producer actually going through and actually changing things. I don't have a real nice UI for it, but you nonetheless get the idea. So we can flip back to the demos and get an idea of how that looks. So what I have here are two VB applications. Now I do have these already. I've sent this out to the WM Talk alias a few different times. If not, I'll still again make this available. What this is I wanted to pare it down to the least amount possible so you can see just what the mechanics are of how to enable this. So this is a server side. These are the ActiveX controls that control the server. It's called the Station API and the Unicast API. And I'm going to use both in conjunction to create a playlist that plays via Unicast. So the very first thing you do off the top there, if you notice, is basically connect. I will create a publishing point called publishing point 1. I will then create a station called multicast station, just like I did in the UI. And I'll create it for distribution purposes only, which means it won't be a multicast, only be unicast. And then in this case, I'm going to have only two streams that I'm going to open up to play. I'm going to play the first one. As soon as it's finished, then I'm going to play the next one. And I'll show you how I do that. When I open it, it's not playing. They're just open, which means we queue the streams up. The server's queuing them up. Then what I do down here is I set the first station to be the first stream to be the active stream for the station. And I actually start it. And then I run the player. So I'm kind of doing a whole bunch right in the first thing. So I create the streams, I activate the first stream, and I actually play it. And then what you'll see is the other thing that this demo does, you'll see, is as soon as I get an event that stream is ended, stream 1, then I'll actually go and play the second stream. The way to customize this, of course, is to actually put in database logic again, where you know that the next, you're getting to the end of the first stream. What's the next stream for this end user, for this broadcast in this case, because it's from the server, and then queue up that next stream. In this case, it's done just to show exactly how it's done. All right, so let's go ahead and play it. So again, it's creating the publishing point for the player to connect to, the station, and one stream and connected to it. That created a shorter file to play through. So it ended. Got that event. Now I'm going on to the next one. Now I have this set in the loop the way it's set up, that this stream stop here just keeps getting called, and it keeps playing the next one. So actually a very short amount of code, and these APIs are really easy to use. You can actually create your own automated station. So the next thing I'll show you is how the live producer scenario would work in a different way. So instead of having the script being automated, just playing through one at a time, what this shows you is how you could actually control what gets played. So in the same way, I connect to both my different ActiveX controls, which allow me to accomplish this. I create my publishing point again, my station again, and I create my two objects again to two different songs. So in this case, if I have 3 camera angles at a concert, I would just open up three different streams. They're not playing again. Then, instead of having them play on a stream end event, I'm going to let them just keep playing, and I'm going to switch. As soon as I click this button or this button, I will switch between the two. So here we go. First thing is to create the station in 2 streams. Go! Excuse me, let me actually kill that station. I already had a station. I should have better air checking. I created a station in 2 streams. I activate the first. And that's this button here, Command 5, and I'll launch the player to actually play it. Now watch what happens again. Now this is I'm that producer, and so instead of buttons, I'd have active stream 1 and 2 as camera angles up. And as I say, I want to now switch to that second camera angle, then I just click on activate stream 2. And you'll see here now, bingo. Now I want to go back to that other camera angle. So this has a number of different scenarios tied into it. I could be that disc jockey playing through a number of songs, and then I want to switch to myself as the talking about the weather, etc. Then I want to switch back to a bunch more songs, etc. I could have n number of stream objects set up, and I can just sit there and look and see them all day. I could have 5 encoders connected to 5 different, a reporter up on Snoqualmie Pass in Seattle doing the weather up there, and the travel, myself, anyone. And I can sit there and switch all day between them. Okay. Yeah, the question is, are these going to be made available? And the answer is yes. Yeah, I'll definitely make all these available up on the website. I have to find out what our plans are for the website. I just think it might be in your material. You may even know more than I do about. I think we're going to have this conference supported where you can go up and actually look at these sessions again online, as well as give these demos. So that's something I'll provide. Let's go back to the slides there. The last thing I'll show you, I'll just do it real quick, is actually looking at how you then can demo this broadcast with the client-side personalized ad. We saw this graphic much earlier. So we flip back here to the demos. And what I'm going to do is create now basically a single, I have this camera set up here. And I'm just going to start encoding here. This is my live session. I'm doing the talking. And then I want to cut over to a personalized ad, for instance. I'm doing some kind of a show, for instance. I want to cut to an ad at some point. So what I'm going to do here is I have queued up these 2 commands down here in the bottom of the encoder. It's called open event and event. I mentioned earlier that open event queues it up in the player. And then the event will actually tell the player that to go switch now. So what I'll show you then on code-wise for this is the ASX first. So the player, this is what, when I launch the player, this is what the player is going to see. It's going to get first, as we saw, that entry. So this is what it connects to, and it'll stay there all day long until I send the command to go switch down to this event. Once I do that, it's going to go off and actually generate this ASP, get an ad, play it, and then I have a resume type here called resume, which means go right back to my broadcast. So this is the Leno scenario again, where he has an ad being broadcast. What I would do from the broadcast side again is put in this 35-second bumper with a picture and music so that the players can go off and do this. And then ASP-wise, just to show you what the code looks like, is in a similar way, it's this basically a random number generator, basically picking up the ad. Okay, so we're all set up. I'll come back to this in just a second to generate that ad. I'll go over to the player. And again, this is the live portion, so it's basically me up here talking. And what I'll do then, as soon as this starts to play, I'll head back to the encoder and start generating the ads. So let's go back. So that person is watching me doing a presentation. I'll say, now let's go and queue that ad up. So now the player is receiving this. It's going out to that ASP server. It's pulling back an URL. Now it says, then it actually makes a connection to that server, queues it up. And then I'm going to actually send the ad. So now the ad's going down the stream again, going from the encoder to the server to the player. Player receives that. Let me get over there quick. And you'll start seeing on the bottom of the screen there, you'll see the switch go from playing over to the next ad.
When was the last time you felt the power of a mountain, the romance of a train, or the unexpected warmth?
And then I head back to the broadcast again after the ad plays. Again, I cut the ad off short so that we can come back and actually see the broadcast. Okay, very good. All right, if we get back to the slide, I have just a couple more slides I wanted to take you through, and then we'll be all ready. So it's just some monitoring and login issues with playlists. Monitoring, again, through the user interface and through the APIs, all available through the SDK. You can monitor everything from the publishing points to the stations, to the progress through the program manager, to streams. You get events through the SDK, so you can monitor these things yourselves. And then also logging, we have a logging where you can nicely log everything the client watches as they go through their playlist. Now, fault tolerance, this is one important thing, not just for playlists, but I wanted to impart on you that with Windows Media Technology, you can create a large amount of redundancy or fault tolerance at every level in the system, from the client side to the server to the encoders. And this is something that you should really think about when you set up an architecture deployment. From the client side, in your ASX, you can have failover URLs. So where you saw 3 entries and an entry is just one URL in it, you can actually have multiple URLs within an entry. And if the player can't connect to the first, it'll try the second. Can't connect to that, it'll try the third. So sometimes people do is have 2 servers in there that it tries, and the third thing is going off to a third server with some ASF that says, sorry, please connect later, because the first 2 servers were overloaded or something. So failover URLs. On the server, multiple servers with redundant configuration stores, and an encoder, use multiple encoders. And this is how you set it up. Look on the first in the ASX in the upper left-hand corner there. You see a repeat going around one entry with 3 URLs. 3 different servers. The first 2 servers is the live content I'm trying to connect to, and the third is the sorry I couldn't connect. This is a great idea. Make sure to try to get this into your system as far as if people can't connect, you want to have an elegant way to basically have them know what's going on at least. And of course, this ASX can come from a web server that is also set up redundantly with fault tolerance and so on, so that they always get an ASX. So now let's assume that you've got the first connect. You want to connect to the server. So when you connect to server 1 is really set up on a load balancing scheme, which drops you down to 2 different Windows Media servers, server 1 and server 2, and you randomly go to those. Even though it says server 1, by the way, you're going to a single IP address. What I have it here is I'm drawing exactly correct. Server 1 and server 2 are really behind that one address. Now at that point, you have a publishing point station and 2 streams, and in the station you always have stream 1 playing on both. So let's say now that the server 1 dies. You connect to server 1 dies. What happens? When you go back to the ASX, that entry has ended, but you're in a loop. You come back up, you try to connect to server 1 again, it's dead. You come to server 2, and now you connect. So a whole other redundant set, basically you'll come back into this and you'll go to server 2. So that is one level of fault tolerance you can set up. And that's just on the server level. Then on the encoder level, you can use stream objects to do the very same thing. Where you're connected to server 1, everything's going great. Your server connection to the client's fantastic. And now that you have an encoder that dies on you for some reason. Well, you have a second encoder set up and that second stream object again. And once you get, again, using the APIs that I showed you earlier, you can get that event from stream 1 that's died. And all you do is you activate the second stream in the station, and you're done. The user doesn't even, they may see a glitch, but they're not disconnected at all, and they continue streaming. So these are some ideas that I think are real beneficial, and hopefully you understand how this actually works through, or how you can set up redundancy in your system. Okay, so I hope I've illustrated for you the various ways you can have client-side playlists and server-side playlists to get the many different scenarios people are trying to enable for playlists and stations along with that insertion. I encourage you to go up to our site. You've seen many different URLs all day, and they're all pointing basically to 2 places, Windows Media site and also the MSDN site. Lots of good technical information on the MSDN site. And then also, again, I will make the samples available for consumption on the site later on. Perhaps somebody actually knows about that right now. I appreciate your time, and thank you for allowing me to present to you, and I hope this was beneficial to you. Thank you.